Have you ever looked at someone else's misfortune and thought it was a good thing? How would you feel if you saw two parents look at their own small child's injury and say, it's a good thing that this happened? Well, this story just might twist your perspective. Welcome to another true tale about humans in abnormal situations. If stories like this are your thing, please give that like button some love and subscribe, and I'll keep telling them. All right, get comfortable. Are you ready to hear a story? An Australian couple, Jenn and Jeremy, escaped the city life and moved about an hour south of Sydney City to a little coastal town where they bought an old house which they absolutely loved, and they poured their hearts into renovating it so that it was nice and suitable to raise kids in a quiet, safe area. The only room they didn't change was the master bedroom, which was at the front of the house. They loved this room. They loved the design, the wooden architecture, everything about it. In fact, their little son Leo also loved that room and refused to sleep in his own bedroom at night. And not just Leo, but the family dog Arthur would also make a nightly habit of jumping onto Jenn and Jeremy's bed, and all of them would sleep together as a family in the master bedroom in the same bed every night. In 2015, when Leo was 4 years old, they signed him up to a local community soccer club. As Jeremy was a photographer, he worked long hours on shoots all day, and Jenn was 6 months pregnant at the time, so she was hoping this would give her a chance to rest a little bit while Leo was being looked after at soccer practice. The soccer club was a short distance from the house, so on the first day, Jenn walks out of the house with Leo, who's super excited about finally playing some sport, and she doesn't really lock up the house too well. She's not that security conscious because it's so close. She thinks, I'm just going to be back soon anyway. But when they get there, Leo immediately starts kicking the ball around with the other kids because he's so excited. And before the game can even start, he takes a giant swing at the ball, goes to strike it, his foot slips across the top of the ball and he falls backwards. And because it's an indoor concrete soccer court, his elbow hits the ground and bang! They look it down and there's a huge piece of bone pushing out against the skin, protruding from the elbow. An ambulance picks him up, they rush him to the hospital nearby. Jeremy says to Jenn, look, I'll come down, look after Leo, you go home and rest. But the doctors notice that Leo's radial nerve, which is here, isn't active, and this is worrying, so they decide they need to operate. Unfortunately, the hospital that day is super full, so they suggest Jenn and Leo go up to the city where Leo can be seen at a children's hospital there. Again, an ambulance rushes them up to that hospital. Jeremy meets them there, and he says to Jenn, look, I'll stay with Leo, and instead of you going all the way back to the house by yourself and being alone at home while you're pregnant, how about you just go and sleep the night at my mother's house, who lives nearby? So after this stressful event of watching your own child's arm getting twisted and broken and being rushed about between two different hospitals, pregnant and exhausted, Jenn finally winds up the day and lies down to go to sleep with the plan to go and see Leo and Jeremy in the morning at the hospital. But she's woken up at 3:30 a.m. by her phone buzzing and buzzing and buzzing. She scrapes herself out of bed, grabs the phone and sees that it's her next door neighbour calling. This real character, he likes to wear a dressing gown all the time and slippers with kind of hippie long hair that's loosely tied back, and he's very friendly with the whole neighbourhood. Jenn immediately presumes the only reason he would be calling me at this time of night is if we've been burgled. I left the house in a hurry. I think one of the windows was slightly open. For sure that's what's happened. So she answers the phone and immediately her neighbour starts screaming, oh my God, Jenn, you're okay, you're okay. It's so good to hear your voice. Jenn asks, what's happened? Have we been burgled? The neighbour replies, you haven't been burgled, but I'm standing out the front of your house with all the other neighbours. We were woken up a short while ago by a huge sound, which we thought was a boulder rolling down the cliffs and smashing through somebody's house. So I'm with all the neighbours now looking at your house where there is a huge gaping hole in your front wall because a car that it was driving down the road opposite the house lost control while doing a right-hand turn, hit the curb, launched into the air, and Dukes of Hazzard style twisted through the air upside down through the front wall of the house and landed perfectly across the family bed with such force that it pushed it through the wall and into the next room. Clearly, Jenn is dumbfounded, calls Jeremy, who thinks she's sleep talking when she starts telling him, "Babe, there's a car on our bed, there's a car on our bed." He's like, "Jenn, you're at my mother's house, calm down, go back to sleep," until eventually he realizes it's really happening. As it turned out, the driver of the car was a 22-year-old woman who had had an argument with her boyfriend, stormed out of the house, jumped in the car and driven away to clear her mind. But she'd stayed on the phone with him and kept arguing with him over the Bluetooth speaker. In fact, when the neighbour first came over and found the car upside down on the bed, he could still hear the boyfriend ranting and raving and screaming at the girl through the Bluetooth speaker without any awareness that she'd had a car accident and that she was upside down in somebody else's house, in their master bedroom, on top of their bed. Fortunately, she was completely okay, just in a lot of shock. In fact, later she would say to Jenn and Jeremy that in her shocked state, hanging upside down, she'd been visited by Jesus himself, who tried to calm her down and tell her everything was going to be okay. To which Jenn and Jeremy laughed and replied, No, that wasn't Jesus, that was just our neighbour. Neighbours would also say that her boyfriend turned up at the scene later, but instead of stopping and checking on how she was, in a scene like something out of The Simpsons, just yelled out of the car window as he slowly drove past, "Oh, now look what you've done!" So little Leo, who was a huge fan of superheroes, was told that by sacrificing his special soccer match and having his own arm broken, he had managed to save not just himself but his entire family from being killed by a flying car. Alright guys, thanks for listening. That's the juice of today's story. By the way, if you would like to hear this story straight from the source, I've uploaded the full interview with Jenn. It's a great conversation with much more detail, and you'll really get to experience the whole bizarre nature of the event from an inside perspective. Hit the link in the description below to get there. If you enjoyed it, please give that like button some love and subscribe. I'll keep telling you stories. Let me know in the comments below if you think that's fate, if you believe in divine intervention, or if there is a moral to that story that I haven't thought of. This is Ben Planet. See you next time.